So, an introduction is usually the first paragraph of an essay or a paper. Sometimes it can be more than one paragraph. That's very, very rare, and that usually is only for more skilled writers. So, when we talk about the introduction, it's the very first paragraph of a paper. And a lot like when you think of an introduction to a person, when you're being introduced to a person, it's your first impression of the writer. It's your first impression of the topic. It's your first impression of the ideas that are going to be presented in the paper. Essentially, the introduction should be an overview of the entire paper, and it's your first chance to impress your readers and give them a reason to continue reading and give them an idea about what they're going to be reading. So introductions are very, very important, and they're something that students can often overlook. What I have found is that when students write a very strong introduction, usually their paper follows that line and follows suit. It is also a very well organized paper. And when you write a really strong introduction, you impress the reader, and the reader is more likely to continue reading, and the reader is more likely to overlook some errors or some shortfalls in the rest of the paper if you have a really strong introduction. So it's really important that your introductions be strong and that you follow the steps of writing an introduction. So I imagine your question is really, what are the steps of writing an introduction? Well, when we write introduction paragraphs, good writers follow a formula. So just like the P strategy, point, evidence, explanation, there is an acronym that will help you remember introductions. So when I always teach introductions to students, I teach them to remember it as the ABCs of introduction. So if you can remember ABC, you will pretty much have a good understanding of what needs to be in your introduction. So introductions need to have three things. And that may mean three sentences, that may mean more than three sentences, but it really never should be less than three sentences. So the first thing you need, the A, is your attention getting hook. Just like a hook goes out into the water, grabs the mouth of a fish, and pulls it right back to the fisherman or woman, a hook should really go out there, grab your reader, and make your reader want to continue to read. So there's all different types of hooks that we can use. We can use question hooks, we can use quotation hooks, we can use number fact hooks. There's so many different types of hooks, but you really want your first sentence to be something that's attention getting and makes your reader want to continue reading. That's the A. And then the B is really a very important and often overlooked part of introduction paragraphs, and that is background information. So you can't assume that your author knows about your topic. You can't assume that they know the story that you're talking about, or the poem that you're talking about, or the historical event that you're talking about. You can't assume that your reader knows those things, but you have to assume that your reader needs to know a little bit about those things in order to understand your paper. So as a good writer, it's your responsibility to give your reader just enough background knowledge so that they can understand the points that you're making in the paper, but not so much that your paper becomes a summary and not an essay. So when we do background knowledge, I always teach my students to do the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, why. Some students may do how, but who is it about, what is happening, when, where is it happening, why is it happening? And so if you kind of think of that and you can apply that to historical events, you can apply that to, current topics, you can apply that to stories or to poems, and give just a sentence or two background about the topics that you're talking about, that would really be helpful. So that's the B. And the C is a claim. Another word for a claim is your thesis statement. You may have learned it in elementary school as a topic sentence, but your claim is ultimately what you are going to prove in this paper. And your claim should really be that 1 or 2 sentence clear-cut answer to the prompt. So whatever the prompt is asking you, your last sentence of your introduction, your last sentence or two, should be a very clear answer to that question. I taught you guys the TTQA strategy, turning the question around, flipping it, and then giving your reasons. That's that C. That's that thesis statement. So now that we know the ABCs of introductions, let's get to working on writing some of them.